Welcome back to Afternoon Garage. So it's not quite the afternoon yet. It's about 11:35, but it's close enough. The thing we like to do here at Afternoon Garage is make sure that if you have a car on the lift, check it all out. So unfortunately, we have a problem. We have two oil spots here, which neither of them are very good. Oh, you can see there's very wet transaxle back here. And I know these things are notorious for having rear end seals go out. In fact, that's part of the clutch service. And then if you go back here on the oil pan, you can see that you have oil here. Sometimes people attribute that to a pan gasket, but on these, the pan gasket's actually sealed to the motor, so if it's never been broken before, it's unlikely that that's the problem. Uh-oh. That doesn't look very good. You can see here where all the oil is kind of draining down onto the pan, creating a flow, and then eventually ending up towards drifting off the bottom of the pan. I'm not seeing anything on the other side that's very similar at all. This one has an adapter and a pressure gauge sender screws in there. So that doesn't appear to have a problem at all. It looks very dry around here. Okay, so how you get these connectors out is you push this tab down and then pull the connector right out. I think it's a 23 millimeter. Yeah, this thing's supposed to be as tight as you can get it. It has a copper crush washer from what I understand. And there we go. So it does have a copper washer right there. And it's hard to tell where it's been leaking. A lot of times people say that it leaks past in the electrical connector right there and you develop a leak right there, but I'm not completely convinced of that. So I think the thing to do is to clean it all up, put some T-tape on this. Maybe we'll even take it, I don't know if you can see this, but this washer is a little bit scored, so well, that's really hard to see. But yeah, you just take some fine sandpaper and get it flat. I think with as tight as this is probably the source of my leak right here. But we'll clean it up and find out. All right, here's our pressure switch. So it's kind of a little bit scored, a little bit damaged. Not too bad. So what you want to do is take the, I have a sneaking suspicion there's a lot of oil around here. So after you get this loose, it's kind of a double nut situation. This loose, take this off. You can see you have this. Release the spring pressure here, and then kind of twist this out. Okay. And I suspect most of your leaking is going to occur right around here, especially when it's running fully pressurized. Looks like they use some kind of a fiber washer here. Of course, you can see it's pretty well oil soaked. I think what I'm going to do is I'll put a little dab of silicone in there and get it nice and tight, and then put something on the threads here, and then of course recondition this copper washer and get it all ready to go back in. See how that works for me. Another thing to add, that there's going to be a little O-ring inside of here that can be changed out. A little tiny O-ring that goes on the shaft there might be also helpful to change out. So I put a bit of silicone on this. You can see I put some T-tape on the threads, and see if we can get this back in. I also took this copper washer and sanded it on some 1500 grit sandpaper, make sure it was flat. It was pretty good. Not much wrong with that. So we can put this back in. And they really like to see this thing get pretty tight. And plug in the electrical connector. All right, there we go. Now I want to clean this area all up here, clean underneath the pan and everything to make sure we get all this grease off of here. Don't want any of that in there anymore, so we can see if it's continuing to leak. Looks good now though. I'm gonna hit it again and then rinse it down one more time and probably get underneath it, take a shower, and then go take a shower, and I'll be back. All right, we fixed that oil leak and trying to change the rest of the oil here. So one thing, a little bit to note on with the Deloreans is there's a myriad of different oil filters you can use. What I recommend here is the Bosch. It's a 3421. Some of them are too big around and they interfere with the oil pressure sender. Now the oil pressure sender is not the same sender that we repaired over there. That was an oil pressure switch, although they call them both senders. This one here actually operates the gauge, and here's kind of what it looks like here. So there's a pretty good view of the oil pressure sender there, what I'm talking about. Basically, you can see the clearance. It's pretty tight, so recommend you get this filter, get the Bosch filter. Put this one on. Save yourself some headache. Okay, after the engine dried up, it dried up pretty good. There's our oil pressure switch. I've already ran the vehicle, verified that this isn't leaking anymore. This is not becoming a problem. You can see also around the oil pan that all of the bolts no longer have oil in them. Did a pretty good job of cleaning the whole thing up here. So here's the transmission where this was kind of oily back here. It's kind of oil. We need to watch, kind of check for oil coming out of here, which is the where it's going to be leaking out of the rear main seal, if that's going to be happening. That's the most important thing, is get it to where it's clean, and then you'll be able to see if it's leaking and not leak anymore. You'll be able to see exactly where it's going to leak. Well, there's no better way than find out if you fix the oil leak. You got to drive it. Let's do that. I got this car, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago now. When I got it, it was a complete basket case. The body was pretty straight, and that's good because you don't want to ever paint one of these things. But the clutch was having problems, and the fuel distributor was all gummed up, and all these things, and you know, the fuel tank coming apart. Everything pretty much happened. All of it, almost with the exception. I just all of it. I had even had a steering shaft bushing. When I got in it and I bought the car that day, I could move the steering wheel around. It had so much play in it. It probably had, I don't know, half an inch, 3/4 of an inch of just side to side movement. So it wasn't anything with the bearing in here. It was actually just a bushing down there that is made out of plastic, and it kind of comes apart. You know, these cars, they were really kind of prototype cars. They were really never in what they would call production stage. And it's a hard thing buying a car like that. You buy a car that people are still monkeying around with, you're gonna have little problems. I'm okay with that. I'm perfectly fine with that. There's a lot of people that are happy. God, here's my turn signal.
There's a lot of people who are perfectly happy with having cars that are sitting in their driveway and they can look at, or they sit in their garage for years and years. Mine have to run. This car has a lot in common with Fisker Karma in the way that it was brought to market and the way that it was marketed, and actually the parallels are kind of strange. So I had to get one of those too. And but let me tell you, when you get them running right, man, they're a joy to own, and you got to keep on driving them. You have to keep on driving these cars. If you don't drive these cars and you let them sit for too long, I'm talking about you should be driving these at least once a month, once every couple months. I really love it. I really enjoy this car. I think this car has been one of the better cars that I've ever had. Although, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago I wouldn't have told you that, because this thing was giving me a lot of headaches. But now, it's very enjoyable. I have a few things that are wrong, you know. This round, it didn't fix everything, but there's a few things that don't work right, but that's okay. I'm gonna go get gas. Again. That's a pretty good drive. So one thing I forgot to mention, when you put fuel in it, make sure you put something that's non-ethanol. If possible, maybe something called clear fuel. I know it's really expensive, but especially if you have these cars where they're sitting and you're only driving them once every month or once every couple months or something like that, you just don't want that ethanol in the system corroding all the work you just did. So let's back up on the lift now. So let's check for some oil leaks. Yeah, it all looks pretty good in here. Looks like we got the majority of it. I'm still seeing it wet right down here, which means there's probably bad things going on with the rear main seal, but that's okay. At least we know it's, the pan gasket here is really dry. All the bolts are dry up here. So up here where we did our work, you can see everything's still really dry up there. So that's great. We're not seeing any oil dripping down on the pan anymore. So there's your information about Delorean oil leaks. There are many other places probably where you could drop oil. It has really robust aluminum valve covers, and you typically don't see any leaking going on there. The oil pan's glued on, so that's good. No leak's going to happen there. So we're going to come back and revisit this and check, I don't know, maybe a couple months down the road and see if things are getting worse or if it's getting better. But this test drive we just took pretty much just told us everything we need to know about where we need to go from here. So let me talk to you something about subscribing to somebody on YouTube. Doesn't cost anything to do, so just hit that Afternoon Garage logo right there. So if you yourself are not a subscriber, or you know somebody else who might enjoy this content, just let them know. Thank you for your support.